It's often said that you learn more from tough times than from good times. For Formula One drivers, tough times can feel very tough. Losing your hard-fought place in the sport, wondering if you'll ever get it back, that's among the toughest of all. Jan Lammers waited longer than anyone else in history for that second chance. More than 10 years. And in those tough times, he learned a lot.
In those days, I thought I knew it all, but later on you learned that you never know it all. If you over and over and do the same thing and end up in the same position, you have to wonder yourself, you have something to do with that. So I thought, it's me. I can't blame all these teams and all the situations. So I thought, well, if it's not my driving, then I have to smarten up a bit, I'm probably not smart enough.
Welcome to F1 Beyond the Grid. I'm Tom Clarkson, and Jan is one of the most thoughtful people we've ever had on the show. His Formula One career is a lesson for any aspiring racing driver or anyone who wants to be successful and feel fulfilled in any walk of life.
I'm happy because I know that if I would have won one Grand Prix, I would have been annoyed that I didn't win more. It's good to strive for perfection, but if your strive for perfection ends up in never being satisfied with anything anymore, then you go a little bit too far.
Jan's always lived in and around the world of Formula One. He was born near the Zandvoort circuit in the Netherlands, and he learned car control before he was a teenager. Success in the European Formula 3 Championship propelled him into Formula One in the late 1970s. But he admits his own impatience and a lack of guidance meant he didn't get the chance to prove his talent in a front-running car. On his best days, bad luck stopped him challenging for Grand Prix podiums, and he struggled to find a reliable team where he could prove his speed, and he dropped out of the sport in 1982. Determined to get back in, Jan studied himself. He learned new things and changed his attitude. That change helped him to a nail-biting victory at Le Mans and to achieve his personal aim of returning to Formula One after a decade away. He talks about all of this so candidly, it really is inspiring. And he's now applying all of his know-how to his role as sporting director at his beloved Zandvoort. He's marvelling at Max Verstappen's rise, working to make the Dutch Grand Prix the fantastic spectacle that it is, and setting new standards in sustainability. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Jan, it's wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you very much for your time. Now look, you're someone who's lived in Zandvoort all your life. How special is it to see the place buzzing like it is this weekend with the Grand Prix in town?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, of course. I'm literally born here, not in the hospital in Haarlem. It's 10 miles away, but literally in my mom and dad's bedroom, about 200 meters from the sea, but about 100 meters from a garage that was called Garage David. It was a Volkswagen garage there. And in the old days, we had Jim Clark there, and we had the McLarens there, and some other teams, Tyrrell, I believe. But then also in the other garages, like the Fiat garage had Ferrari. So all the local garages were hosting the teams. And on Friday morning, if practice started, there was the moment of glory for the mechanics. I think the older folks will probably remember what I mean, because then they could drive the cars over the street, the regular street, like a parade over the road with the engines not being towed, but really drove them into the main entrance of the track and put them in the pit lane here. So I was born 100 meters away from this garage. So I'm a bit of a beach boy, but I grew up in this environment, playing in the dunes, the beach, and then lucky enough, I ended up at the skid school from Robbie Slotemaker. It's like an old Dutch legend, mostly known for his car control skills. He did all the spins in the movie of Le Mans from Steve McQueen. So I was there when I was 14. It was lovely. But Rob had his skid school here, and when I was 12, I walked in there, and he taught me all I know. So until I was 16, I didn't even know how to drive straight. He was teaching me everything. So to be born here, to live here, to become a racing driver, to end up in Formula One, and to do a few of the local Grand Prix, that is already fantastic. But then Max comes falling from the sky, and he did so well. He's a world champion now. and then we have our own Dutch Grand Prix back, and in a form that we are so proud of. It's wonderful.
Everything you've just described makes me realise how much you and the local community must have missed the race when it wasn't here from 1985 to 2021.
Well, we if we missed it, then we missed it the way it was, and the way it was always initiated by sports clubs. So people not particularly there for their business skills, but more for their passion and enthusiasm for motor racing. So I think Bernie Ecclestone, he nearly got an ulcer, I think, from the problems that we settled him up with, because there was never enough money to do anything. It was always like a battle here financially. So when Prince Bernhard Jr. and his partner Menno de Jong started the initiative to get the Grand Prix back, and that started with Bernie, that was something that he, of course, had to raise an eyebrow, like, oh my God, we're not going there again. But then if you see with the organization now behind it, it's two sports marketing companies, Sport Vibes and TIG from This Is Golf, and the racetrack of Zandvoort. Those three companies are in fact the Dutch Grand Prix organizers, and there's a lot of business and commercial and entertainment skills behind that, and that's what produces this.
Do you think the race could have come back without Max Verstappen?
No. Even though we had Max, when people started talking about, like, do you believe that the Dutch Grand Prix will be back? I said to many people, like, well, the chances of me being struck by lightning in the next 10 seconds is probably higher. So that shows you how much I know about it. But anyway, I have to say I couldn't know that these skills were in this country. So it was a wonderful experience.
What about the wider impact of Max Verstappen on the Dutch motorsport community? I mean, has there been a surge in interest in karting, for example?
Oh, I mean, motorsport is booming here. I mean, we have MP Motorsport that are leading the Formula 2 championship. We have Van Amersfoort, and they all do Formula 2, 3, 4, Formula Regional. And then we have Atse Kerkhoff and Rudy van Buren, who will in the future be the driver coaches. Atse Kerkhoff is a Dutch guy who's doing the drivers coaching for Alfa Romeo in the sims and everything. And we have Rudy van Buren, who will do the same thing for next year with Red Bull. So there is an enormous amount of Dutch expertise in motor racing just rising. And I think that enthusiasm for motor racing is absolutely escalated through Max.
So there could very well be another Max Verstappen just making their way through now.
I don't think so. There will be a lot of very, very good racing drivers, of course, coming to the top, rising to the top. But people like Max Verstappen come around once every 100 years, I think. So personally, I really think, and if he hasn't proven that in the past, then I'm convinced he will prove it in the future. I really think, as objective as I can, I take my orange glasses off. I really think he's the greatest of all time. It's hard to compare Fangio with the likes of Senna, Schumacher, Hamilton and Verstappen, because it's different eras, different challenges. It was physically very, very hard in 70s, 80s, and now it's a little more ergonomic.
You've raced for 40 years, and we're going to come on to your career in a moment. But Jan, what is it that impresses you so much about Max?
What is very impressive with Max is his output. He seldom, or I've never seen him have an off day. You know, you've been around in motor racing. You know that glazed look in their eyes, that you ask them questions while they still have so many questions themselves. So you expect them to answer to your question, and they haven't even answered their own question. So that's when you get ahead of the game, and that's why for these guys it's sometimes very tough. They just get out of the car, they just had a race that was horrible, so they haven't processed that information yet, and there's all the press asking them questions. So you've seen that glazed look of confused drivers, that they don't know why their teammate is so much quicker, they don't know why they can't get any further than whatever position. You've seen that glazed look, and I've never seen that with Max. He's always there. Sometimes in one of those press encounters after a session. He's impatient because he's so angry that he's off the pace that he wants to talk to his engineers and not to lots of journalists. So he wants to get on with it. So we've seen that, but I've never seen him with that vague look like I don't know what's going on and I don't know why I'm so slow today.
And do you think winning the World Championship has taken any of, if there were any of the rough edges off him?
I think it just, calmed his mind because that was always the target, and he's always very clear in his communication. Sometimes a little more clear than the people around him like it, but he's very very clear. So he's also said okay, I've reached my goal. I always wanted to be a world champion Formula One. I am a world champion Formula One. He never set out to have 8 world championships. So I find that clear communication. And that also shows his appreciation for what he already achieved. We all know that whether you winning 5, 6, 7 championships, you can't do without the best car. You need to have that. What I find impressive with Max is that he didn't always have the best car, and still he won so many races and in the end the championship. He started off this year with a car that wasn't quite as good as the Ferraris. So great compliment to the Red Bull team and Max that they've turned that around. And I think now they have had the best setup also with strategies and everything. But still, it's great for a team to know, as we say in Holland, it's great to know that you're not milking in a basket. You know that with Max, if you develop your car, that he will make the best use of it. That just sort of hinges you up. So that's almost like the terminal of success, I call it. So their interaction between the drivers and the team know that you can ask questions to the team that they can answer eventually, and the other way around, whatever you ask the driver, he will deliver. And that's of course an unbeatable combination, as we have seen.
Is it odd for you to see Max having this success? Because you must have known him all his life, because you know Jos well, of course.
Yeah, well, I know Jos, and Jos drove for us in the A1 team, and I really think that Jos was already a driver with the X factor. But I think if you compare Jos with Max, then the great example is that Max, when his talent was at its highest, the moment was also there. There was a place at Toro Rosso, and Toro Rosso was quick enough. The team was good enough to show his potential. So he could do something with that, because the last thing you want to experience if you go from the lower categories, Formula 2, Formula 3, usually for a lot of drivers, they collect lots and lots and lots of trophies in karting, in Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, and then they go to Formula 1, and sometimes that trophy cabinet stays empty for 2-3 years, and even longer, sometimes for their whole career. Look at Ralf Schumacher. He enters into Formula 1, and then you drive at best in the middle of the pack or at the back, and still you have to get in the car with the winning mentality. So that's like an artificial, sort of like self-hypnotized way of you have to get the best of that potential. And somebody like Max, he comes from the karting, which he's already was very special. Then he goes into Formula 3, and in a very short time, he's a front runner. And then he has the connection in Formula 1. He gets with the team that also is successful, because and that keeps your flow. So other drivers are challenged because all of a sudden they're not winning anymore, and that's difficult for them. And Max have been able to connect and win the races very soon in Formula 1. Somebody like Jos had the difficulty of having to start next to Michael Schumacher. It was extremely physical in those days. Jos already had a bit of trouble with an old neck injury. I think Jos was battling forces that later on Max didn't have to deal with.
The ideal holiday should be just like an F1 race. Action-packed in a luxurious atmosphere and a breathtaking location. And that is exactly what an MSC cruise offers you. They specialise in top-of-their-class cruises with more than 1,000 itineraries, like the blue seas of the Caribbean, the sun and culture of the Mediterranean Sea, the sceneries of Northern Europe, the oriental fascination of the Emirates, and the lively atmospheres of South America. All of their cruise ships offer as many thrills or as much relaxation as you desire. So you can decide to opt into the excitement of the onboard entertainment and sports one day, or you can zone out and pamper yourself in the spa instead. Plus, there's the added bonus of a comprehensive choice of specialty restaurants, a new destination every day, land excursions, and much, much more. MSC cruise ships have always set the technological standards for safety, environmental care, and onboard design, especially their imminent launch of MSC World Europa, a truly ultra-modern urban metropolis at sea. So why not explore MSC Cruises' world of destinations and book yourself a holiday that's going to take your breath away from start to finish on msccruises.com. MSC Cruises, a world of discovery. Let's talk about Jan Lammers, the racing driver now. First of all, Formula One. It was a frustrating time for you in F1, but how do you reflect on it all now?
I'm very happy about it because everything I sort of like set out to do when I was 16, I thought I'm going to win the Monaco Grand Prix and I'm going to win the Dutch Grand Prix and the World Championship. I'm going to win Indianapolis, the Rally Monte Carlo, Le Mans, Daytona. Well, the only thing that worked is Le Mans and Daytona. All the other things I didn't achieve. But then if I see whatever else around it that I experienced, being in Japan for 2.5 years altogether, living in California for a year, in England for a bit, and the experiences that you sort of like go through and the people that you meet and what you learn from the experience and the people, that is something that I have never could have had in my focus. So I'm very privileged. It was also the accident and the death of Ayrton Senna that was quite a mind changer for myself because you're watching Ayrton drive and there's a racing driver who's doing all the things that you would have loved to do. So you envy him very much with a lot of respect. You're watching him and then all of a sudden you see that horrible accident and he passes away. And then that was a confusing experience because I thought who should envy who now? I sit here still healthy and well, and so from that moment on, I've as a way of life, I've always counted my blessings. I've never driven for a team that was good enough that I could either show the level or the lack of my talent. Because maybe if I would have driven for Ferrari or one of the other wonderful teams, McLaren, Williams, you name it, if I would drive for them, maybe I would have seen that I was like an Irvine or a Barrichello or so good enough to win the odd race, but not the World Championship. I'm happy because I know that if I would have won one Grand Prix, I would have been annoyed that I didn't win more. It's good to strive for perfection, but if your strive for perfection ends up in never being satisfied with anything anymore, then you go a little bit too far.
Let's talk about your level. How much hype was there around you after you won the European Formula 3 Championship in 1978?
Yeah, bearing in mind that in those days we didn't have internet. We all had like the traditional media, and there was like two main newspapers in Holland that broadcasted it. One was evolved around Rotterdam, the Common Daily is that translated, and then the Telegraph from Amsterdam. And then we had some other press, general press, that followed it. And we had like 2 car magazines. I think we had the public TV channel 1, maybe even 2. But that was it. So communication was from a totally different level. Now people can practically drive along in a Grand Prix. So with the media that we have then, it was comparable that what is happening with Max now. To win the European Championship, I'm still the only Dutch person that has ever done that. I hope that the next one will be my son. And so we had a lot of media attention. But then you are a little bit like a celebrity and a racing driver.
How much interest was there in you from Formula One? I mean, options for 1979. You ended up at Shadow, but were there other options?
No, not really. There weren't. I also have to say that the level of management around a racing driver, like I was at that time, was zero. There was absolutely no expertise in Holland that I ran into that could actually help me. So I was like a pupil that had to teach. I had to still learn so much, but then I was the one eye in the line of blind. So when I went for Shadow, there was absolutely no chance And I didn't have the patience to wait another year. Alain Prost, who I raced against in Formula 3, he was patient enough to wait a year, and then he went straight to McLaren, and he had a chance to do well. And I probably jumped a little bit too quickly for Shadow, thinking like, I've made it to Formula 1. I drive there for 1 year to get experience. But you don't want to have the experience of losing races with a bad team. So you always have to be with a team where you have a chance to grow.
But hindsight is always 20/20, isn't it?
Of course,
and when you're given the
course.
opportunity, I imagine it's incredibly difficult to say no.
I wasn't any smarter either, you know, that I was born in a very wealthy family without money. So I had 5 brothers, 1 sister. So in terms of joy of life and health and everything, and enjoying the simple things of life, I was very wealthy, if you look at it that way. But we didn't have any money in our family. There was no experience, business experience or entrepreneurship in our family. Yeah, you have to pave your own way that you need to drive on, more or less.
Tell us about Elio De Angelis. He was your teammate that year. I always thought he was slightly underrated, a really quick racing driver. Is that your experience of him?
Oh, absolutely. But we learn now lately to be very, very, very good. You know, to be an exceptional talent in motor racing is a nice start. Because there's many of them. And Elio, in those days, there was no junior programs. There were no big factory. Well, there probably were, but there were fewer factory teams. And the whole structure and the institute to educate young drivers. Now we have the Ferrari Academy. We have you name it. There's loads of academies and junior programs. And I think Lewis was probably the first one to be picked up at the age of 12, if I'm not mistaken. By Ron Dennis. So that was wonderful and good for him, because I was already following then, and I really thought like, wow, you know, there's somebody special. But you didn't have that then, and Elio was one of these guys that was already quick in karting. He immediately was quick in Formula 3, so I grew up with him through that time. So to me, it was not a surprise that he was quick. Elio was such a classic. He was such a beautiful person. I never forget that picture. I mean, he was my teammate. So for a whole year we drove together, and then a year later there was a live television show just for the German Grand Prix, and they had him in the studio, and he was there behind the piano in a beautiful yellow sweater. The whole setting and the whole picture, you know, was really soft and beautiful, and totally the opposite from the bestial racing scene. And he sat there, and then he played some classic music. And there was a picture that will always stay with me, like from Elio, apart from him being the great racing driver. So, and I really thought like, well, that was such a beautiful side of Elio, and it's a shame that I wasn't mature enough at that time to enjoy his company, because I think he was a beautiful person, but I only started to realize that when I was late. At that moment, you only talk to each other based on what's behind the comma, you know, are you 1/10 quicker or slower? So that's all you're thinking about at that age.
Now look, let's fast forward to the following year, 1980, the D4 ATS. Let's talk Long Beach. You qualified 4th, an extraordinary performance. Just how good was that lap?
Well, it was surprising. It was that whole period, let's say the first half year of 1980, has educated me incredible in a lot of ways, because a little bit of the background. I started the year with Gunter Schmid at ATS, and he thought we had Heineken of a sponsor, but we didn't have Heineken of a sponsor. So at Wolfgang Köpp was the manager from ATS at that moment, and at some point he got very nervous, and he said like well, I don't care if, we said like, we don't have Heineken as a sponsor. Yeah, well, whatever you can come up with. If you don't have Heineken, fine, but come up with something else, because Gunter Schmid is going to kill me if I tell him that you have nothing. I said, yeah, but we do have nothing. Oh my God. So I said to my manager in Holland, I said, let's go to Gunter. So we went to Germany, we sat down, and we told Gunter like, listen, Gunter, we have no money, 0. So he fell off his chair and he thought like, oh my God, because the car was ready, everything was prepared, he invested his money in it, and we had no money. So very embarrassing for us, of course, but also a difficult situation. Then I said to Gunter, I said, okay, why not do it like this? We just make a deal for 100,000 per race. In those days, you spoke about that kind of money. So let's say like I do 2 races and we make an agreement for 200,000 Deutschmarks, dollars, whatever it was, 200,000. And if after 2 races I haven't found a sponsor, that's it. I leave the team. I owe you 200. I haven't got that now, but for the rest of my life, I can see myself earning that. So I will pay you. I don't know how long it will take me, but that's it. So after 2 races, I had no money. I was out. The car was pretty bad because we were running 2 cars, a 2-car team, and ATS wasn't ready for that. So the equipment was pretty bad, and then I fell out of Formula One. I just went to South Africa just to watch the race and to see if a miracle would happen. A miracle didn't happen, but an accident happened with Mark Surer. In front of my eyes, I was watching the practice. He crashed and he broke both his legs. So he couldn't drive the next race. So all of a sudden, it was the other way around, where I was the only one experienced with the team and the car and everything. So I was the easiest one to say, like, okay, let Jan drive the car again. So he asked me if I wanted to drive. Well, of course I did. But in the meanwhile, there was the new car designed by Gustav Brunner. Mark broke his legs on Friday, and I did an attempt in the other car on the next day to qualify. I missed 1/10 or something. So here I am. I come back from South Africa trying, everything to get the speed out of the car, and I don't qualify. 3 weeks later, I'm in Long Beach, and I do exactly the same thing I've been doing for years. And all of a sudden, I was, all the time, I was in the free practice, I was P4 and ended up P8. But then qualifying was there. And in those days, if you were the quickest driver team, you got the soft tires. So I got the same tires as the front runners. So I was just doing the same thing what I've been doing for years. And then I get past that pit straight and I see P1 on my board, in Formula One after being in there for like 17, 18 months. And I thought, P1? And I immediately went straight onto the escape road because I was so confused. So I made a donut and continued. And for like 50 minutes, I was P1. Then later on, I trundled back to P4. But still, I thought like, okay, I'm never going to doubt myself anymore, ever. Because I did exactly the same thing as I did 3 weeks before. Now I have a good car and I'm running up front. So I promised myself, like, doubt is a total waste of time.
But was it a particularly clean lap? Do you remember it as being very satisfying?
No, it was a good lap, and it is Long Beach is a track where it's all like how do you say that, spontaneously. Hey, you just act, you don't think. Silverstone I always found difficult. You have so much time to think on that straight, like I'm going to take it flat. So you can think too much. But Long Beach is just all responsive, like downhill slalom skiing. You just do, you don't think. So it was a lap that went very well. I knew it was a good lap, and then I came sort of onto the pit straight, and you went over a bit of a hump on the apex. I obviously went a bit too quick, and I knew I was going to hit the wall, but I didn't care. So I just brushed the wall, and because the finish line was like 50 meters further. So I finished that lap, having known that I've hit the left rear. So that was a good lap, but the next day I paid the price for it because 200 meters after the start, I broke my drive shaft, the one that I damaged myself probably. Roy Tops was our mechanic, and he's a fantastic mechanic. But we didn't have many spare parts, so I think the left drive shaft broke from what I did myself the day before. But that was an experience, going from hero to zero. On Sunday morning at breakfast in one of those typical diners in America, I opened the papers, and the Ferraris were not having a good time. And the headline was, maybe it was a little local paper, but it was a big line for me, and my favorite still. And it said, "Lammers leaves the Ferraris red-faced," and so that was nice to wake up like that. But anyway, so a good start, and then after 200 meters, I was out.
How did it feel on the grid, looking back and seeing someone like Alan Jones behind you on the grid?
Well, I already, my first Grand Prix, I was in Argentina in 79, and I always looked up to people like Niki Lauda, Mario Andretti, and Emerson Fittipaldi. They all, Niki I didn't know too well, but particularly with Emerson I became great friends still. His son is karting and racing. But those people were icons for me. So on my first race, I was next to Niki Lauda on the grid. Not because I was so quick, but because he had a bad car. But still, I didn't have the results really to be able to enjoy it completely.
Well, it's such a fickle business, this, isn't it? And did that P4 on the grid in Long Beach give you any interest from the bigger teams?
Not immediately then. I'm sure I got their attention. But the year before, I was already 14th with the Shadow. So I qualified very well. Usually I was struggling to qualify. So street racing was my thing, I guess. My best period I had was in 1980. So first we had Long Beach. So the speed was good. The race was history. Then we had Monaco later on. And I feel that there also I would have been able to qualify in the second row and maybe even better than that, because I really had a fantastic lap. Now these days we would all remember if you had 2 times purple and then the last sector you run into traffic, then we all remember like, oh, you could have had pole there. I had a lap like that. So the first 2 sectors were really very, very good. They felt brilliant. But then I came around the swimming pool, and then there was, I believe, Keke Rosberg, the father of Nico. He was there driving slowly, so my lap was gone. So I ended up being 13th on the grid. And then in the race, there was the accident where the Tyrrell just somersaulted through the...
Derek Daly, yeah.
Yeah, with Derek Daly. That accident just took place. I waited until all the mess was settled. And then I thought, okay, now I can drive by. And as I drove by, Riccardo Patrese just came reversing out of that pileup. So I hit my right rear tire. So I was in the pit for like maybe 5 or 6 laps. So when I got back onto the track, I was behind Gilles Villeneuve in the Ferrari. He was running second. And I could follow him. So the speed was there. I think later I saw that I had like the 4th quickest time in the race. So the speed was there, but it's something that evaporates and nobody will ever know.
We know now.
Yeah, I don't know. So that was nice, and I'm proud of that. Then we went to Zolder. I was running in between the Ferraris. I was catching Jody, I believe. I was P6. I was catching Jody and driving away from Gilles, or the other way around. I can't quite remember. Then my gearbox broke. And then we had Spain. I qualified, I think, 10th, but I was 6th after the first lap, behind Alan Jones. Alan had softer tires than I had. I knew that. So he disappears out of sight in the beginning. But later I caught him up, and I was right on his gearbox with the harder tire. So that was the right choice. And then my brakes were gone. So I had to pedal to the bottom. So I had to go in the pits, and Alan Jones wins the race. You know, so those were good races. And then to finalize that story, I think it was 81 in South Africa, where Nelson was leading. Elio De Angelis was running second, and I went from 10th to 3rd on the first lap. I was about to pass Elio on the second lap, and we touched, and my wheel was gone. So there I was running top 3 speed. So those were my good races in Formula One.
Was there ever talk of you staying at ATS for the remainder of the 1980 season, or was Mark Seurer always going to come back and retake his seat?
Yeah, I think Mark was always going to come back because Gunther Schmidt had an image of being a very German, you know, and I want not have this anymore. That's literally translated from German. Ich möchte das nicht haben. But you know, so you can always make fun of the character side of somebody. It's almost like a cartoon. So people sometimes made fun of him, but he was a great guy, and he was straightforward, he was honest. So I think that was the proof that he just promised Seurer that he could get back. And although we were doing good, he got his seat back. And I went to Ensign, thinking that I could rule the world now, of course. And then I was back on the grid again. So I've seen that you as a driver, you can't defy the law of gravity.
And then once you'd gone to Ensign, the cars got harder, didn't they? And then by the end of 82, had you slightly fallen out of love with Formula One, and were you looking to go to Porsche in sports cars?
Well, that was really maybe a bit from desperation, because in 1982, I think the Theodore was a very good car. Only I don't think we did enough mileage to make it reliable. There was Gary Anderson and there was Tony Southgate, so people that know the business. So I'm sure that if we would have had a little bit more time and a bit more budget, then that car could have become good. And there was signs of it being good, because in the Monaco, the first day, we didn't have any tires. We were in the pit lane with just our rims, just very much as a demonstration. So the first day I didn't drive. And then on Saturday morning we could drive, and we were 18th, and maybe there was like 30 people trying to qualify in those days. And then during qualifying I was 21st, just missed out by a smidge. So the car was really good. But, you know, you never know how good you are, because you always drive at your own limit, and you think that's it. But yeah, if there's no other driver getting in there and proving that there's still more speed there. So I did the best that I could with the things that I have available. I think that also just from an intellectual point of view, I had to learn a lot. I know that in those days I thought I knew it all, but later on you learned that you never know it all.
Using the internet without a VPN is a lot like using your mobile phone without a protective case. A majority of the time you'd be absolutely fine, but all it takes is that one small slip as it falls out of your pocket onto the cold concrete, and the next thing you know, you're looking at a broken phone. You'd wish you'd protected yourself beforehand, wouldn't you? Well, by using ExpressVPN, you'll always have the peace of mind that your personal data is protected when you access the internet. When you use unencrypted Wi-Fi networks in public spaces, any hacker on the same network can gain access to your personal information, and your data is valuable to them. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person selling personal information on the dark web. But there's no need to leave yourself at risk. ExpressVPN creates a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. So secure, in fact, that it would take a hacker with a supercomputer over 1 billion years to get past ExpressVPN's encryption. And what's really great is it's compatible with all devices and so easy to get started. Just download the app on your phone, laptop or tablet, tap one button, and you're protected. So secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/grid. That's expressvpn.com/grid, and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/grid. What were your feelings about leaving Formula One? Did you see Formula One as the pinnacle that you always wanted to return to?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's proven by my comeback in 1992. I had the opportunity. March was in lots of trouble with Ilmor also, and Henny Vollenberg, Dutch guy that is used to running a transport company. And with a transport company, you look at the digits behind the comma, because that's very detailed planning. And so he was economically, he was a great guy. So I think he did a lot of damage control and made March last, I think, at least a half a year longer than they otherwise would have. So I had an opportunity to come back to Formula One. It did cost me quite a bit of my private money, everything that I had at that moment actually. But because it went wrong, we paid Ilmor for the engines, and Ilmor just said like, well, thank you, we take that from the account from March of last year. And so there I was empty-handed. So I had a court case of like 1 week, 9 to 5 in the morning in London. We simply didn't handle our business very well then. So they won the court case, I lost all my money, and that was it. So I did only 2 races in 92.
It's a funny record that you hold, actually. It's the longest gap between races. I've got the stats here. It's 10 years, 3 months, and 22 days. What does that stat mean to you?
Well, that can mean that I'm very determined, and that I think later from my sports car career, we can probably say that I'm a long distance runner. You know, you can also say that I catch on slowly. It is what it is. I must say I stand by what I did then, because I really thought like, well, when I'm 90, I don't want to sort of like sit there in an old people's home and thinking like maybe I should have tried it one more. So I just did it. And I also think very often now you get the question like, you know, how do you get involved in racing? Parents that have know nothing about racing, but they have a son that they would like to start up. How do you do that? And what I always say to people is like, if you do something, people will help you. If you do something with all that you have in you, whatever little it might be, but if you do something, people will help you, but people won't do it for you. So you have to take the initiative. As a metaphor, if you start the 24 hours of Le Mans with only 1 hour of fuel, then during the first hour you tell this to people, and then soon you will find somebody who will sponsor the second hour. So it's like a marathon. It starts with the first step. Start with what you have. Go to the local butcher. These days, all supermarkets, of course, but still. Find somebody within your area, and if you have any talent, your biggest talent should probably be to enthuse those people around you that can help you further.
You sound like a hustler.
I might be.
Look, how had the cars changed in the 10 years that you'd been away from 82 to 92?
Ergonomically, they become much better. First, we had, I think, the carbon chassis, of course, and soon after the carbon brakes. The carbon brakes meant that you could brake so late. If you had to shift down with an H pattern, if you had to shift down from 6 to 2nd, you simply wouldn't make it. I remember testing with Toyota with the sports car in Eastern Creek in Australia, and you had to sort of brake, shift down, and be back on the throttle, and it was really the shifting that limited your speed. You couldn't do it quick enough. So for that reason, the sequential boxers came, later on the flipper system, so it became more and more comfortable. You remember the pictures of Senna and Mansell and Piquet with the bandage on their hands from the blisters. So if you didn't have to do the shifting anymore, that was a great advantage. Then the fly-by-wire throttle, the carbon brakes, also the flippering, that you didn't have to use the clutch anymore. The headrests all meant that it became more and more and more comfortable. So
and much quicker. Were the cars much quicker?
Also, yeah, but you could get to that speed because it was more accessible because of the comfort. So it wasn't like weightlifting anymore. It was really all about the driving. And then later on, you got power steering. In the Le Mans cars, we even got air conditioning. So if it was a bit too hot, you put it a bit higher. And if your steering gets heavy, you put a bit more power steering. So for me, at the last 2 Le Mans that I did, okay, I was already in my 60s, but for me, it was like a walk in the park almost.
Well, let's talk about Le Mans, because that 1988 race is such a defining moment for your career. But when we talk about that race as a whole, you've made 24 starts at Le Mans in your career. What is it about that race?
I think it's the level of difficulty that's a challenge. Of course, people that climb mountains like the Mount Everest and all that, they know that it's all about the challenge. Just the fact that it's so difficult is your challenge, your drive to do it. And there also it is like such a team effort. Because
isn't that an alien concept for a racing driver? I always wonder how you guys cope with having to share your car with another racing driver.
In the beginning, that's horrible. You know, you want to drive for 24 hours. You know, what was a guy doing in my seat? That some of them even pee in it, and then you have to sit in it. So it's horrible.
Please tell me that's not true.
Some of them do. You know and they tell you that with a smile, and you think, ooh, you know. But anyway, I mean that was the exception and not the rule. Thank God. But. No, so in the beginning you have to get used to that, and in the beginning you have to, you can get people, you can take them out of Formula One, but you can't take Formula One out of the people. And I was a little bit when I was racing with Jonathan Palmer, then I was just racing him. You know, I wasn't looking at the bigger picture that together we had to win that race. I was just racing him. I'm not sure if he was racing me also. I have no idea, but that was it. If he went quicker with that same car than me, that's horrible. You know, you don't want that to happen. So you was trying to beat each other's times. And later on, by the time I was at Jaguar, I was matured a little bit and calmed down a little bit. And with Andy Wallace and Johnny Dumfries, so sad that Johnny passed away like a year and a half ago now. But it was a great experience, and that memory lives on forever, of course.
And the three of you complemented each other, because when you look at the hard facts, you were the senior driver. Andy Wallace at the time had made the jump up from Formula 3, so he lacked experience. Johnny, of course, had done that year at Lotus in Formula 1, but would you say that you complemented each other when you look at what you were capable of doing?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I have a lot of presentations these days for businesses and business clubs and you name it. And very often I say, like, Le Mans is a race, and any team effort, you can lose that on your own. So if on the Hunajara straight I would have just twisted the wheel, I can crash the car. There you go, job done. You lost it on your own. That's so from unfortunately we have too many examples in real life. You know that on your own, in a destructive way, you can do something, but in a constructive way, if you want to win something, either in sports or whatever, you need a team. And you need to work from a team. So you always have to think like what can I add to this team, because ultimately you add to yourself. And if you're always the go-getter that wants to take and goes into meeting rooms like what's in it for me, you know, then automatically you take from yourself. So it's a creative process to create a winning atmosphere, and it's an attitude of giving. Giving all you've got, giving that to the team, and if everybody has that effort, you become that unbeatable team.
How long did it take you to realize what you've just described?
Long. I realized it was actually quite a game changer for me. It was in '85. I was driving Indy cars for Forsythe, very good team. I was leading the race with not too many laps to go, and that was in Miami on that tower on the pole that we know from the pole position. So on the top, I saw my number 33 by coincidence, and I saw 33 on the top, and I took a deep breath while I was going flat out to that right corner in Miami, at Tamiami Park. And I took a deep breath and I thought, I'm back on schedule, you know. So I was on my way to winning that race, but then I blew it because I braked too late. I went in the gravel trap, thought I was going to hit the wall, but it turned out to be white sand. Looking in the sun, I was bracing myself, and then there was no impact. I thought, what is this? So anyway, I lost that race because I screwed up. But in that time, my mindset was already much better than the years before. And then I was immediately sort of like bought away by Gurney, All-American Races. Fantastic privilege to have raced for Dan Gurney, such an icon and such a great guy and a great team. But he had more passion and ambition than money. So he split up with his teammate, and all of a sudden I was there again. No ride, team was close to bankrupt, and that was it. And then I basically let go. I thought, okay, I've been racing for 13 years now, and I've tried everything I could. So I'm just going to play golf, and I'm going to just enjoy myself. And if somebody thinks that I can actually do something, they will call me. And if that's Formula Ford, I will start all over again. And whoever it is that calls me and recognize that I can actually do something, I will drive for them. And that's it. And then I will start over. And at the same time, I thought like, well, you know, what is it? Is it my driving? Is it my skills? And then I thought I'm better educated than most of the drivers there, so it can't be that. And if you over and over and do the same thing and end up in the same position, you have to wonder yourself, like, you know, you have something to do with that. So I thought, it's me. I can't blame all these teams and all the situations. So I thought, well, if it's not my driving, then I have to smarten up a bit, you know. I'm probably not smart enough. So I did a lot of reading. I read one wonderful book. That's first I read the Silva Mind Control Method. That's all about visualization and meditation, and that helped me. And after that, I read a book, 3 Magic Words, and that sort of really taught me a lot. And the magic in your mind and all these things, because thinking is something that's totally free, so that's a very efficient process, and that helped me, that strengthened me. And then Roger Silman from Jaguar TWR called me, so I didn't have to go all the way back to Formula Ford. I was happy with that. I drove for them, and I had a time where I drove better than ever before, and I felt wonderful. So that was a big change for me.
And how close did you get to not finishing that Le Mans in 1988?
That was on a thin wire. That was really on a thin wire, because what I've learned also in my business communications and speeches, I've learned that what is different in business than sport, that in business profit is a given and loss is the exception. At least I hope so for the people in business, because you won't last if you lose. If you sell a product, you earn money on that. So in business, profit is the given and the exception is losing. In sport, losing is the rule and winning is the exception, because no matter who you take, whether it's Max, Lewis, Messi, Ronaldo, Manchester United, Barcelona, Jordan, Schumacher, Senna, you name them, they've lost most of their races and matches. So basically, you should start, and that's how we started in Le Mans in 1988. I told the guys, listen, we are not going to finish this race. So they were surprised. I said, no, the gearbox is going to break. Also in sports, your attitude should be okay, I am going to lose this match. I am going to win and lose this race, unless. So it's really to make yourself sharp and to not underestimate your task. That's how we started Le Mans. Because we know in those days, if you lose second gear, you bypass it. You go from first to third and see how far you get. I said, let's not wait until that happens, and then we're going to drive very careful. I said, let's start the race knowing this box is going to break. Unless. And
was it a weakness? Was the gearbox?
Yeah, always. For most of the teams, the weakest link was the gearbox. So when third gear actually broke, I selected fourth and it connected. So I thought, I'm never going to touch this gear lever anymore, not even in the pit. And that was because just before I went in the car, Raoul Boesel got out. And he was undoing his shoelaces, and he said, okay, that's it for me. I said, what? He says, yeah, car broke down. Oh, what happened? Well, I selected third gear, was gone, fourth gear gone, fifth gear gone, and that was it. So then I got in the car for the last 2 hours. And
this is the sister car?
The sister car, yeah. And we were leading. So I get in the car, I get to Tête Rouge. And at some point, I think we must have been taking that in second, I think. But I select third gear, and it broke, so it was gone, freewheeling. I put in fourth, and it connected. And then, having sort of Raoul's story in my mind, I thought, I'm never going to touch this lever. We finished the race, and for the technos under the listeners, the secondary shaft was split in the middle. So if I would have changed gear once, it would have just totally gone to pieces. And so we finished the race.
How much of the race was there still to go?
I think about 1.5 hours. So I was
in fourth gear.
Yeah. And that's a fourth gear that was built for 200 miles, huh? And then I still had to make a pit stop, so I was slipping the clutch until the end of the pit road. And in those days you had radio communication, but also scanners, and I didn't want to make a Porsche with Hans Stuck any wiser than they were. So on the radio I got the message okay, my lead was shrinking like mad, of course. So then Kevin, who was on the radio in those days, he said to me well, he's so far behind now, so don't go much slower. And then I said, well, I have a little secret here. And then he said yeah, we don't want to know, Jan, we don't want to know. I said, you're right, you don't want to know. So I kept it to myself because, the scanners would have, I didn't want to speed up the Porsches.
That's fantastic. Wow. What a tremendous moment for you after everything you'd been through.
I feel so incredibly privileged because it's not. Nobody has a patent on smartness or whatever. Just have to be lucky that you get the right thought at the right moment, and they just come to me. So at that stage, so I'm so happy that these thoughts came to me, and I made the decisions, and that we've been able to just do that all together. So I feel just very, very privileged that it was so well appreciated later.
And it was the start of a great friendship with both Andy and Johnny.
Yeah.
Johnny came on the podcast 18 months ago. Wonderful to hear about his Formula One career. I know that you and Johnny Dumfries were good mates from 88 onwards.
Absolutely. I mean, I think after '88 they were more like brothers to me than anything else. I still have a great contact with Andy, and yeah, it's wonderful. We don't see each other often, but like with good friendships, you know, even if you don't see them for 10 or 20 years, you know, you just pick up as if you just got a phone call that got disconnected. So you just continue the conversation where you stopped it the last time, and no, that is like it's almost like an unconditional love, friendship, you know, that is just for life.
When you think of Johnny Dumfries, what do you miss about him?
Just his friendliness. He's such a good person, and he's such a good friend, and so much just really friendship and sympathy. He's such a great guy, and he was a fantastic father. You know, I think he's the best father you can have, and for the people that he loved and his friends, he was all ears, and no, so just a great guy, and I really can't sum him up in words, but I hope I come a little bit halfway or something, but no, he's absolutely a lovely guy.
If you're having one of those days where you're wondering how you're going to check everything off your to-do list, juggling work with chores and errands to run, DoorDash could be the answer you're looking for. With DoorDash, you can get dinner, household essentials, and everything on your grocery list delivered in under an hour. You can even get hold of last-minute school supplies or fresh flowers if you need something for a special occasion but don't have time to shop. And what's great about DoorDash is that it gives you the option to support local businesses alongside the well-known establishments out there. So you're not just getting the things you love, but you're supporting the community you love as well. With more than 300,000 partners, you can support your neighbourhood go-tos and independent stores, or choose from favourite national restaurants like Popeyes and the Cheesecake Factory. You can shop local and support your community without even leaving the house. From the stores and restaurants to the dashers driving around, each order you place provides a new opportunity for everyone involved, because with DoorDash, there is a neighbourhood of good in every order. For a limited time, our listeners can get 50% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code GRID. That's 50% off, up to $12 in value, and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code GRID. Don't forget, that's code GRID for 50% off your first order with DoorDash, subject to change, terms apply. Yeah, and final one on Le Mans from me is you partnered many Formula One drivers at that race. You talked about Jonathan Palmer, but I can mention Eddie Cheever, Patrick Tambay, Teo Fabi. But the year of all years, tell me if I'm wrong, was 1996 when you partnered Mario Andretti and Derek Warwick. You finished third overall. Can you describe what it was like to partner those two guys?
Yeah, it's great. Derek already I knew from Formula 3 many years before that, since 76 in Formula Ford. So I knew them for a long time, Derek Daly even too. And in sports cars I drove with Jacques Villeneuve, Eddie Irvine, Stefan Johansson, Ralph Furman. Yeah, so many great drivers, and it was lots of fun. But particularly with Mario, Mario he's such. I mean, he's the guy. You know, he's just such a cool guy. And if you look at him, if you would have to tell people like what does a racing driver look like, Mario Andretti, that's the man. You know, so you would draw him out like that. But then he's such a nice guy that he can talk like for 20 minutes with his wife about the new nail polish she's got. So he can switch very easy from very small trivial issues and small talk to like big things in motor racing. So no, he's just a lovely guy. Yeah.
Did Mario get the team aspect of Le Mans?
I'm not sure. I think he was 58 at the time. I don't think you lose your skills of the driving, but the drive in your mind that to be quick, you need to think that motor racing is the most important thing in your life. And I think he was over that. There were other things in his life that were important. Of course, his kids who were racing, his grandchilds and everything. So he did it because that's what he did all his life. But I think his mind was already out of it, but his body was still in there.
Yeah, and it's been so wonderful to talk to you. Look, when you sum it all up, which was the best racing car you ever drove?
Probably the Toyota, because at some tracks in '92 we were quicker than the Formula Ones. I recall that we were testing after the Grand Prix in Monza, with the long straights, of course, helped by the long straights. I think there we were like 2 or 3 tenths quicker than the lap record of Senna the day before.
And we'll end our little chat just bringing it back to Zandvoort, to this race. How do you see the future of the Dutch Grand Prix?
I think it has a long future ahead of it, without sort of like underestimating the task, of course, because you see it in sports, the sports people, the teams, whatever you do today won't be good enough tomorrow. So we are very proud that we've put something on the road last year that is also inspiring to other organizers. We try to be, of course, neutral from an environment point of view. We wanted to be the most sustainable Grand Prix on the calendar, and I think we are probably close with Canada. So we're very proud of that, but also the festival type and the entertainment type, like the maximum effort we make to make sure that those people go home on Sunday and they had like a bucket list event. That's our intention. So we try to have a very empathic view to the spectators with organizing the event. We see that FOM is very happy with that, and sometimes ask us even to look over the shoulders with other promoters. We try to share the experience. So no, we're very, very proud and happy that we've been able to not drain energy from FOM, but that we've been able to add a little bit of value or energy to FOM. Who would have thought that? And that's only because of a lot of individuals focused on their own job, and then you look up and you see what you created together. So that's wonderful. So I think the marriage with FOM looks to be good. They are happy with us, at least we have that impression, and we are extremely happy here. Well, I hope on Sunday we've been able to top last year's event.
It's interesting you touch on the sustainability of it, because it's fantastic seeing all the fans cycling in, and then aren't there prizes for fans that recycle their cups?
Yeah.
Just all sorts of little initiatives like that.
Yeah, well, when you get at the entrance, you get a token. So if you order something, you hand in that token. Basically, it comes down to it that last year we've been able to recycle 70% of all the cups, and we're trying to collect 100%. So we can recycle everything and have no waste. But there's lots of other things that we try to achieve. For the electricity, for example, we can't rely on the normal network that we have. So we need generators, but those generators all run on biofuel. We have made smart grids, so rather than having one generator in corner 7 and one in 5, etc., we have smart grids, so we have less generators and more cables, if you like. So there's lots of smart things like that. I have to say, and this is an initiative from FOM rather than Holland, I like the robot cam in the paddock. And I hope that all the drivers will just make a maximum effort to just say something in the camera or wave or whatever. But that's a live stream to the Children's Hospital, the Maxima Medical Centrum in Utrecht. And that's a children's hospital. So those kids, give me goosebumps. Those kids are washing, and all the drivers that go by can say something there or do something funny or whatever. So that's one of the best inventions from an entertainment point of view.
There's so much inspiring stuff going on, and it's been inspiring to talk to you, Jan. Thank you. When are we going to see you driving a modern Formula One car around Zandvoort?
Yeah, well, I can't wait. Just to help me I had to do the analysis for the Dutch public TV, the
Yes.
NOS, and to help me to know what I'm talking about, because I think I know what I talk about, but I can't really confirm if that's actually true.
Christian Horner, if you're listening.
Yeah, well, some of the drivers probably they think that I talk from my neck, but no, I would love that. That would be very nice.
All right. Jan, thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful to chat.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
What an inspiring man Jan is. He articulated his thoughts so clearly about such a wide range of subjects, and his positivity is infectious. Every bit of advice he gives, especially the section where he talks about taking the initiative. If you do something, then people will help you, was interesting and helpful. Life lessons that we can all benefit from. Thanks, Jan. It was great to catch up, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. As ever, please send in your memories and thoughts about Jan. Did you see him race in Formula One? Or were you at Le Mans in 1988 to witness his memorable victory for Jaguar? Let me know either by using the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid, or you can contact me direct at Tom Clarkson F1. Which brings me on to what you sent in about René Arnoux after last week's episode. It was such a treat to have René on the show, and it brought back a lot of happy memories for many of us. Let's start with this from Simon Worth. Love this one, Tom. Likewise, René forms some of my earliest memories of watching Formula One. A bloody fast driver, and what a great guy. Loved hearing him chat about Gilles and Enzo Ferrari. Thank you. Well, thanks for the note, Simon. And you're right, on his day, René was the fastest man out there. And it was great to hear him talk about his friend Gilles and dealing with Enzo Ferrari. Next, let's hear this from Andrew R. Brilliant, Tom. Was wondering when you would get around to interviewing René, a hero of mine, when I first started watching Formula One in 1983. His one-lap pace was phenomenal, and I'd love to know what caused him to be fired one race into 1985. That was the only topic he wouldn't elaborate on, wasn't it, Andrew? But still, there was so much gold in there for us all to enjoy. And finally, what about this from Peter Carroll Kraus? I saw René win at Zandvoort in 1983. He drove to the track by himself in what looked like a late 60s or early 70s Rolls Royce, and he was wearing just a t-shirt and jeans. He's the only driver I've ever seen lean forward in the cockpit as if to make the car go faster, or at least to be a little better aerodynamically. What a story, Peter. That was such an aggressive seat position, wasn't it? And René was without a doubt a dude. I can imagine him arriving at a racetrack in a roller. We'll leave it there for messages. We receive lots as ever, and I've read them all. Thank you. We really love your feedback. So what are you listening to next? How about F1 Nation's Dutch Grand Prix review? Just search your podcast app for F1 Nation and hear race previews and reviews every Monday. Thanks for listening. F1 Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 and Audioboom Studios. Until next time, keep it flat out.